Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
So the words are really far apart and the spaces between the words are almost infinite.
Will's body is dying, but his mind is a pattern of electrical signals. We can upload his consciousness. We can save him.
Not like this.
What are you looking at?
Good morning. My name is Gregory Bifidis. I'll get to who I am and what I do in a minute. Let me explain to you the 3 or 4 video clips you saw, which some of you will probably recognize, some of you won't. One of the clips you all recognize, obviously, from 2001, the infamous HAL 9000 computer. The clip that you saw of the pounding rock music is a tape we did last year at Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. Last year was focused on augmented reality and virtual reality, which I'm going to get to. One clip was from the movie Her, which I think, are you all familiar with the movie Her? Which was basically an analysis of what happens when you create an operating system that's completely powered by artificial intelligence, which is exactly what Google Home is doing, what Amazon Echo is doing, what now Apple speakers are doing, what Apple is doing with Speaker. The reason that is important is there's a line in that clip, which you may not have heard, in which Samantha says her work is to analyze the space, the infinite space between words, and that's exactly what artificial intelligence does. It's a fabulous movie if you get a chance to see it. Last Scene is one of my favorite shows, House of Cards, the U.S. version, which is based on a U.K. version. I'm sure many of you have seen it. You probably know it. What is that doing in there? That's in there because House of Cards is one of the first TV series movies that was basically conceived in a way by an algorithm. How? Netflix, which decided that it wanted to be in the movie business and produce things, has one of the most sophisticated consumer recommendation engines around. Multiple layers of algorithms, multiple layers of analysis. Not how many movies has Jude Law been in, or what are the titles of movies. They have algorithms that can tell you how many movies have a woman in danger on a mountain who's killed by a dragon. How many men appear wearing black in a series of Metro movies, all right? Amazing levels. What they did was they canvassed their 28 million subscribers and came up with what series would be cool. And what came up was Shakespeare, and as we all know, House of Cards is based on Macbeth. And they came up with political drama and real bastards as characters, all right, and a lot of other combinations. They then did 2 things never done in the entertainment business before. They paid $100 million for the rights for House of Cards, almost 3 times the average that you pay for the rights to get to something. Number 2, they guaranteed the production crew, both the directors and the actors and the writers, 2 full seasons. They guaranteed them a minimum of 10 episodes. So they could then draw an arc and know where the entire process was going. So they wanted complete freedom, all right? How did they market it? Using those same algorithms and knowing what people liked. In one example, knowing that many people that rent Netflix, there are people that say, I really want strong female characters. They got an advert that only showed Robin Wright and all of her scenes. Another group only saw the evil actors, all right? So it was basically targeted. They produced 97 separate ads, so no one person got the same ad, all right? And it's an amazing system. I'm going to try to give you an overall arc of artificial intelligence, and I'm trying to give you the artificial intelligence as I see it from 10,000 feet, so to speak. So I'm not going to get into the dynamics of Bayesian statistics or the math. I'm going to show you hopefully some funky slides, but do it that way. I have 2 companies, GB Media Productions. I know it took me years to come up with a name for that one. So I have GP Media Productions, and my second company is called Project Counsel Group. Project Counsel Group is e-discovery, cybersecurity. We also have a job site with 110,000 members on it. We advertise jobs for companies, law firms, whatever, contract attorneys, forensic experts, IT people, all on a temporary basis. And that basically funds the fun stuff that I'm doing. And GP Media, and I've met and interviewed many of you, or many of your companies. We just finished a whole series. We were at the cybersecurity conference in Lille, and we interviewed MSAB. We interviewed Celebrite at Legal Tech. We interviewed Nuix. So a lot of these vendors I know quite well. Oh, my first slide, excellent. In the e-discovery field, I've been very, 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 very lucky. I've worked on some fabulous stuff. Steve Whetstone, who's out here someplace from, he and I go back to the prehistoric age. We met 2008, and we worked on the Lehman investigation, which was the first major investigation after the financial meltdown. Steve was with Stratify. I had a company supplying the contract attorneys. We formed a bond. I wouldn't call it a bromance, but we became close. And from there, previous to that, I had worked on the Parmalat corruption case. I have worked on many of the other financial investigations, so I've had a kind of interesting pathway through e-discovery field. I worked with Nico's out here, Nico Vandenberger. He's out here. There you are. He and I, when you were at Deloitte at the time, he and I worked in Luxembourg, where the client would not let the data leave the country. We had to set up a separate black data room with its own computers, its own servers, its own people. We were using Nuix, and I'm bringing this example up because most of the vendors in this room, if not all the vendors, are problem solvers. When we explained the problem to Nuix, they said, not an issue. They loaded up they dropped in 2 servers into Luxembourg, basically set them up the way we wanted it, set up the dark room for us, a black room for us, which is really, really cool. And it was the most complicated case I ever worked, one of the most complicated cases I ever worked on. A DOJ investigation laying on top of a DG Comp investigation laying on top of several private litigations. I don't know how many terabytes of data there was, but it was incredibly complex. And to end it all, I worked on the infamous Societe Generale case with Mr. Kerviel, who built, well, however way you want to pronounce it, or however you want to term it, the bank lost $1.2 billion. Was my first exposure to company intranet, to keep the stuff off the emails, to keep the stuff not memorialized. All the transactions, all the conversations they were having were on what they thought was going to be an erasable intranet. And of course it wasn't, and all the information was available. Okay. So after that very, very long introduction, let me try to talk about artificial intelligence. The unknown is on the run. And artificial intelligence is one of the factors, I think, that is leading people to believe that we are now in control of our destiny, we are in control of nature, we are the most powerful force. So people say, now we're in the infamous Anthropocene, you know? And the joke of it is, what comes after? We won't know because we'll all be dead. So we don't know what's going to come after that. But I have a lot of problems with the fact that we have so much power, that we have so many things going on. One of my favorite conferences, I love this sign, is Helsinki, the Slush conference. If you know about it, is in Helsinki in November. This is the sign that greets you at the airport. This is one of several conferences in Europe that American companies use to recruit AI experts, general technology experts. What's happening is, especially in Zurich, which I'll get to in a second, especially AI, they use these conferences to recruit people because the biggest US research centers or US funded research centers now are actually in Europe. Google Analytics here in Zurich, Disney, which I'm going to get to in a second, and Google Analytics, for instance, in Tel Aviv, are amazing centers full of European experts. And that's a drive that I'm seeing happening across the whole ecosystem. And what that means is, to give you an idea about why I like Zurich so much, Quite by accident, I was on a plane and I met some people from ETH, and they got me into a MOOC program on artificial intelligence a couple of years ago, and that drove my desire to AI. And the stuff that ETH does, and I don't have to there's probably several graduates and several people that are involved with that fabulous school. What's even funkier is Disney, Walt Disney Studios Research Center is here in Zurich. The funkiest stuff they do is not done out in Anaheim, it's done here. Two great examples. They've invented a wireless room. It's in beta. You literally can leave your phone any place in the room and it'll be recharged. You don't have to put it on anything. It's an ambient recharging system, number one. Number two, using artificial intelligence, they have and this camera is also in beta, they have a camera, they can focus at an actor. And they can put on the makeup, they can age the face, and do everything that he normally would do in the makeup studio, the camera does. And I've seen it, and it's weird. And it's not ready for prime time yet, but it's just one of many things that's going on. That's me. So that's probably many of us. And I sit there and I absorb all this stuff. I go to all these conferences and then I write about it. And I have a blog. I don't force my blog on anybody. I've got about 85,000 subscribers now. I left a box of cards behind the center camera if you want to take a look at our YouTube sites, see who we interview, see what we write about, up to you. But I think that, especially when it comes to artificial intelligence, you have to always be wearing your bullshit cap because there's so much media stuff out there that's not right. That's just being, the famous thing in journalism was if it bleeds, it leads. In AI, if you can come up with something or call it AI or call it threatening or call it the robot apocalypse, it'll get a headline. And I think you need to be aware of that. And what I try to do, at least in my blogs and one of my writings is, I had a guru from many, many years ago from Alex investment firm in Barris, and she basically said, look, unless you take time and step back, our whole life is full of bits and pieces and tweets and Twitters and Facebooks, and you have to just lay it all out, step back, look at it, and that's what I try to do. I try to take a step back, think about it, work it through. What I tried to do is, and these slides will be incorporated in the video. So what we tried to do was, a friend of mine who I work with in data science, we tried to present all the major food groups, so to speak, that all flow into or come out of AI. And this slide will be made available. I'm not going to go through every single point, but it's a complex process. In the e-discovery market, the text-to-speech and text translation, things of that sort, is coming up to almost human quality. Not quite human quality. Google's probably way ahead of this as far as ability. Facebook's like right behind, as well as image recognition. And all of you who are in the e-discovery sphere know this is incredibly important with respect to unstructured data. Mathematics to me is understanding. I think the problem with AI is people who are math averse don't need to be. When I do a very short intro course on AI, and I use the example of people say, okay, what's machine learning? Why do we keep hearing about it? It's invading the villages. Women and children are taking off the street. They're scared. What the hell is this stuff? And the example I use is if you take a piece of paper, crumble it up, and try to get it into a basket, after about 25, 30, 40, 50 times, you'll get it into the basket. And that's machine learning, just this completely repetitive motion, a completely repetitive process. And that's the building block. And machine learning will be the building block, and many of you know about machine learning, will be the building block of AI going forward as far as the future, because that is what you all need to know, and that's what we all have to try to grasp. Which takes me to Oskar Schlemmer. Oskar Schlemmer was a famous, well-known German composer, choreographer, artist, painter. I know him through an exhibit I saw many years ago in Paris. And he created these dancing images. And he saw the way society was going, of a highly accelerated industrial revolution that was reaching fruition to a degree no one expected in the early 1900s, created what people later thought were the first androids. And these things were doing all these kinds of mechanical posturing. I got a copy of his diaries. And in his diaries, he says this, all right? He talked about the mechanical and automated future and a combination that would be complex. And this is 1915, all right? This guy was way ahead of his time. Machine learning. Machine learning is a process that I've spent a lot of time with, and I'm going to use that as an introduction to augmented reality and virtual reality and why those things are important. Virtual reality, you know, okay? That's a system that's putting you into a world that does not exist. And to do it, you need to have a helmet, a goggle, a set that blocks out your ears, blocks out your eyes, and puts you in that environment. Augmented reality, also called mixed reality, is, for lack of a better phrase, Google Glass, which we all thought was a dead product, but actually was a precursor to augmented reality. That's a device in which you see the real world, and then things are implanted in it for you. The move toward ambient computing, computing all around you, all right, that Eric Schmidt talked about, the chairman of Google, where you don't even know, you know, he said computers will disappear in 2 years ago, if you remember, he had the famous quote, computers will disappear. And people said, what? What he meant was, you won't even know they're there. And that's the whole purpose and the whole point of some of these artificial intelligence systems that I mentioned to you before, like Google Home and Amazon Echo, and why they're very important. Because these companies want you to experience frictionless computing, all right? Go to any technology conference today, you hear two words, frictionless and speed. And because artificial intelligence exists today because we have developed over time cheap storage, cheap analytics, and cheap ways to not only collect the various points, but relate to them. That's what's driving AI. And the point is, and we all know frictionless things. You take out your phone, you go to a Starbucks, you go to a thing, you just kind of swoop that sucker right over the goddamn thing, and you just bought a coffee, you bought a dress, you bought a book, they want to make it so simple, all right? They want to make it easy. And we love it, all right? We love it because it makes our lives easy. Who's fighting this? The Swedes. Why? There are several Swedish technology companies, and I can't get into the details, but they've developed systems where, and I'll give you a very basic one, I saw this demonstrated at Stockholm about a year ago, where you have a laptop, a toaster, and your TV plugged into your electronic system. And a monitor goes off that says, hey, you're using too much power, you need to unplug one of these, all right? Most technology companies, i.e. Silicon Valley, don't want you to think about that stuff. They want you to use your stuff 24/7. The Swedes are looking at it from the standpoint of environmental protection, conservation of energy, and they're using AI and machine learning, all that kind of stuff to learn your patterns, to figure it out. And what does the system say is, well, you haven't had toast in I don't know how long, so let's unplug the toaster so you can use this, this, and this. When we have time a little later, if I have time, depending on this man cuts me off, I want to talk a little bit about fake news, how artificial intelligence does that. We may not have time, so I left it toward the end. You know, Mr. Trump says he's got 2.5 million followers. We now know that 900,000 of those are Go bots, that are Twitter accounts that were created and just replicate whatever he says. The fake news is a very dark, deep, scary thing to me. Google is a full stack AI company, all right? They are the ones to beat, and it's going to be hard. Because if you know anything about the Tensor chip, the AI chip they designed about 3 years ago, and Eric DeGrasse, who's my chief technology officer, and he attends these Google developer events. This is what a full AI company wants to be. Who's closest to it now? Amazon, all right? All Amazon is missing is its own chip, all right? All Facebook is missing is its own chip. Apple's getting close. Apple doesn't have the real cloud deployment that it really wants. But the point is, this is the next new thing, all right? You want to be a full stack AI company. These are all the data streams Google gets, all right? I've lost track. I mean, I saw the number once of how many petabytes of data they have. Google and its photo recognition system, they're working on and this was basically driven by current events. Google is developing an algorithm that can distinguish an actor waving a gun and a terrorist waving a gun. A terrorist promotional video piece in a movie. All right? How do they do that? Because they fed into the system 900 million photos. No one has that. Nobody has that. The only guy that comes close to that is the Chinese company Baidu, if I pronounced that right. This is why the purchase of Whole Foods is so important. We know that Amazon collects reams and reams of data. I don't know, do people still use the word ream? And now they're able to merge it into this huge system that already exists. How many engineers does Amazon have just working on AI? 2,500, various locations, okay? They're gonna plug these guys into it, all right? They're gonna be able to track the most preferable demographic market in the United States and do all kinds of funky analysis and all kinds of funky stuff. And they now have 574 distribution points in the highest economic communities in the United States to distribute all that crap, all right? Distribute all those purchases. So there's a hell of a system. And what did they also buy? They tried to get in the food business, as you probably may or may not know, but they couldn't figure out a transportation system that could get fresh food to various locations on time. Whole Foods has been doing that for 12 years, 14 years. And they have built into their trucks this amazing system, algorithmically produced, to make that happen, all right? That's why this is not a grocery store purchase, this is an AI purchase. Self-driving cars. These are all the various sensor points, all right, that a car has to analyze, a car has to look at. This is a complicated thing. I was in Stuttgart last year. Mercedes-Benz did a one-day workshop on how all this stuff works, and the guys from Intel who make the chips for all this stuff were explaining all this crap, and I kind of borrowed this chart from that conference from them, all right? Thousands of data points. Well, more than thousands. What happens is it's 4,000 gigabytes of data a day. The average person in this room consumes 650, all right? Huge, huge, huge data points. There's two ways you do it. You educate AI, all right? Conventional AI education is if you come to a stop sign, you check. Is there a pedestrian? Is the light red? Can you go right? Turn right. You basically program it from a conventional AI standpoint. Then there's machine learning, where they simply feed in millions and millions and millions of cars making that right turn, all right? That's the complexity of it. Now, why am I bringing this stuff up? Most of you, or a lot of you probably heard about last year, Google had its first traffic fatality, self-driving car. A very knowledgeable guy who should have known better. Car was going down the highway, kept going straight right into a truck. How could this thing not pick up a truck? It was a very special truck. There is in the United States, I haven't seen them here in Europe, that have a high bridge. All right, so they're not close to the actual container is not close to the road, it's quite high. The sensors saw clear light, but could not distinguish and could not identify that this clear light that was around it was a truck. All right? This is complicated stuff. And when I read more about this stuff and I study this stuff, I realize what most of the experts say. We're 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the road before this stuff really, really gets perfected. And I know it's difficult in this business to make predictions. You know, most of you or some of you know Jeff Hahn, famous technology guy for Ericsson, in 2006 came out with this model phone. You can see this is really cool. Notice there's no keyboard. We've developed something with a touch screen. Take a long time before we really develop this. 1 year later, Jobs is out with the iPhone, resets everything to zero. So it's difficult to make predictions, but I'm saying from what I've seen, what I've learned, stepping back, looking at all the shards, looking at all the pieces, my feeling is that we're quite a ways down the road. The future to me, and I want to talk about virtual reality, augmented reality, is because people go, you know, what does it mean to me? All right. These are two technologies being developed. All right. They're very cool technologies. So I walk into a room and I meet Marcus, and I'm wearing my, for lack of a better phrase, Google Glass. And before I go to the conference, I fed in all the attendees, every information I have on Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever. I walk in the room and I face Marcus, and popping up over Marcus's head is his LinkedIn profile, all right, through my Google Glass. I also find out through Salesforce, he has check writing ability for $1 million, and he can close deals at conferences. So this is the guy that I want to meet. This guy is carrying his briefcase and has no value to me whatsoever because he doesn't have anything. This guy's cool because not his LinkedIn, but his Tinder account pops up. I might want to meet this guy later. So, and these are technologies being developed. The second coolest technology is, again, Google Glass, a version of Google Glass. You put it on, you go into your living room, the living room scans, completely formats the room. I've worn these glasses. And you click in the corner and go, God, I'd love to have a table over there, a lamp. And then the lamp you want, or various lamps, and this is something Amazon's developing, appears. And you can visualize your whole room, and you can move the furniture around. Better yet, when you're done, it tells you where to buy it. And you know where it tells you to buy it? Amazon. Wow. How cool is that? You know, I don't even have to go to the department store. That's the future that, that I think is coming. Now, my two favorite pictures, the future. Anybody recognize this? This is the famous movie. This is the famous shot called Blue Marble. It was shot in 1972 by Jack Eckert, who was on the Apollo 17 spacecraft. They had on board 4 cameras, specially built Hasselblad. Did I pronounce that right? Hasselblad cameras. 3 were used in fixed positions. 1 was loose. He picked it up. And he shot the Earth 4 times. This is the second one he shot. He changed the settings. It was a camera nut. This was what they thought was the best one. This was shot from 7,800 kilometers as they came around the far side of the moon. It's about 7,800 kilometers, okay? It's not called Blue Marble on NASA. NASA has, and I know this for a lot of other reasons, NASA has 4 photography repositories that you can search. And this isn't called Blue Marble. It's called AR-10772. All right, they didn't use the popular names. Anybody recognize this? This was shot by a satellite that was doing weather reviews of the Earth in 2012. Okay? Look at it and you think, that's impossible because satellites are only 980 kilometers above the Earth. Except it's not one shot, it's 2,000 shots that the algorithm combined and had to color correct. It's called tile layering. Because when you're 980 kilometers from the Earth, you have atmospheric issues that prevent clear shots. We then merged it into what they call a deep space satellite telescopic system, which was the numbers, I forget how far these things go out, but say 500,000 kilometers, whatever, way, way, way out there. So this is a merge of 2,000 photographs, okay? Accurate as far as color, size, Earth, yes. False, because you would think this was shot from the same place that Jack Eckert was standing or sitting or whatever in 1972. This is what we talk about when we talk about false news and imaging and changing things. And the technology is getting either better or worse depending on how you look at it. My favorite, 2 of my favorite writers, George Orwell, Aldous Huxley. When Mr. Snowden, 4 years ago, came out with everything, described the surveillance state, everybody said George Orwell. I didn't. I said, no, Aldous Huxley. Because we love shiny things. We just love shiny things. And truth will be drowned in a sea of irrelevance, okay? He wrote this in 1948. I'll just let you read it because nobody wants to have slides read to them. Natural Questions is one of my favorite books. It's very, very long, but it is a book written by a guy who the Roman emperor forced to commit suicide because he was too smart. And he realized that the Roman emperor was around. He was talking about it and writing about it. So the emperor said, but this is the world. This is, we will find out. I don't know whether my grandchildren will find out. But eventually we're going to find out, God, those people were so stupid. So thank you very much for listening to me. You're very patient, and thank you very much.